Liberty versus the Tyranny of Socialism is his new book. He's a best-selling author. You've heard him fill in for some of the biggest talk shows in the country, the biggest, Rush Limbaugh, and do his own show from time to time, WalterEWilliams.com. And I was telling him during the break when we first got him online that I like him a lot more than I like Rush Limbaugh because I like the fact that he's a professor, that he covers economics, and that he really exposes, when I hear him on air, the hypocrisy of the Republican Party, which needs to be done more and more. So for the next 30 minutes, Walter E. Williams joins us. We then go live to a press conference from the Texas Capitol where they're openly trying to have the governor sign a bill where no more Fourth Amendment. The CPS will be able to take your children without even a fake order. Those are already flimsy from a judge. But a host of issues to talk about with Walter E. Williams today. Sir, thank you for coming on with us.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
It's great to have you here with us. For those that may not know who you are, most probably do, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a professor of economics. I've been teaching at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia, for going on 30 years. And my big job is trying to convince my fellow Americans on the moral superiority of individual liberty and its main ingredient, limited government. It's a hard job.
What do you think of Ron Paul?
I think he's a great. I think he's one of the few, and perhaps you can only name 4 or 5 congressmen that if the founders were to come back, they would speak to. He's one of the few that they would have respect for.
So you think he's founding father caliber, or they would just talk to him?
Well, I think they would talk to him. That is, most congressmen, they have utter contempt for the Constitution of the United States and the moral principles that were the bedrock at our founding. And when I say that, a lot of people say, well, what are you talking about? Well, if you read through the Constitution, the government, the founders gave the government, the Congress, 21 things to do, and it's listed in Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution. And if it's not there, they can't do it. And to give you an idea how far we've strayed, James Madison, who's the acknowledged father of the Constitution, he said in 1794, when Congress appropriated $15,000 to help some French refugees, he said, and I'm virtually quoting him, and all these quotes are available on my website at WalterEWilliams.com, he says, I cannot undertake to lay my finger on that article in the Constitution that allows Congress to take the money of their constituents for the purposes of benevolence. Now, if you look at the federal budget today, 2/3 or 3/4 of it is for the purpose of benevolence. That is, the major function of the United States Congress today is that of taking the rightful property of one American and giving it to another American to whom it does not belong. Now, I'm talking about farm subsidies, business bailouts, food stamps, welfare, prescription drugs, you just name it, on and on. Congress is engaged in what, if you and I did it, we go to jail. That is, taking the property of one person and giving it to another. It's nothing more than legalized theft.
And now it becomes more and more obvious with government just running wild at every level. Isn't the government just becoming a gang with a flag with a bunch of enforcers?
Well, they're becoming Congress and the White House, and they've been this way for a long time. It's just escalated recently. They're just a group of thugs.
Well, there's no doubt of that. I mean, we see all these reports where Congress is exempt from most of the laws they pass on us. Isn't that one of the hallmarks of tyranny?
That is absolutely right. That is when people talk about rule of law and equality before the law, it means that the same rules, the same laws that you and I must obey also apply to people in government. They must also obey them. That is, if something is immoral for you and I to do, it's immoral for government to do.
Amazing. We got 25 minutes left with him after this break. He's Walter E. Williams. And the website's WalterEWilliams.com. Can't forget that. We have links to it up on our websites. Just absolutely great to have him on. I remember listening to him when I was in college, way back in the early 1990s. Just great to have him on with us. We'll be right back after this quick break. Stay with us. The good old folks at New Silver Solution. And the website is super supernaturalsilver.com. Supernaturalsilver.com. This is something that kills bacteria, viruses, you name it, well documented. They've got it down to a super small nano-sized particle. Supernaturalsilver.com. Check them out at Infowars.com. Well, he is a professor of economics, best-selling author, nationally syndicated radio talk show host in his part-time, and a syndicated columnist. WalterEWilliams.com. His latest column out today is Americans Love Government. But I was making the point during the break to him, isn't that because we've been domesticated, brought up in it, not knowing how good it is without this giant government? And people don't know that in every case in history, government grows till it destroys the society. Can you speak to that, sir?
Yes, I can. That is, if you look at the federal government now as a percentage of our GDP, the federal government spends something like 22% of our GDP, and state and local governments spend up to, I think the total amount goes to near 40% of the GDP is spent by government in our country. Now, from 1787, the inception of our nation, from 1787 until the 1920s, the federal government spent only 3% of the GDP, except during wartime, and the state and local government spent around 9% of the GDP, and so making for a total of 12% of the GDP, as opposed to close to 40%, was being spent by government. And keep in mind that in 1787, we were a third world nation, and by 1920, we were the most powerful nation on the face of the earth, and we were rich. That is, we went through this whole interval without a big government, and it turns out something else that's significant that Americans just plain don't know is that the idea that Congress and the White House should be involved with the economy, stimulating the economy, New Deal. This is a new idea. That is, we've had recessions and depressions that went from 1 year to 7 years throughout our whole history. And matter of fact, in 1920, there was a very, very sharp downturn in the economy. There was no government program, and we went off after that. In 1922, we went through the Roaring '20s. In the 1790, there was a Great Depression. Matter of fact, it was, I think, like 7 years, and there was no government program. Now, the government programs that deal with recessions came when there's a sharp turn down in the economy in 1929, 1930, and the Hoover administration started the government programs, and Roosevelt just followed on with it with the New Deal, and what they did, they turned what would have been in 1930, what would have been at the maximum a 3-year sharp downturn in the economy. They turned it into a 16-year affair. That is, the Great Depression was not over until 1946.
And Japan has now 12, 13 years doing the same thing. And I remember studying those panics, as they called them, and those depressions. They were much shorter. They were much more localized. Back before the Federal Reserve, back before government got involved, back before private interests got involved with government in this unholy alliance. And they promised, we'll never have another run on the bank, we'll never have another recession or depression. And then 1913 to 1929, they then take that depression and just exacerbate it with all the price controls and the rest of it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you want to rather mark the current set of problems that we face now is a direct result of Congress. That is, I always suggest to people that the fundamentals of the American economy are, even now, still reasonably sound. We have this huge problem in the financial sector. The financial sector is a big problem, and it's affecting some other parts of the economy. But Congress is the cause of the problems in the financial sector, particularly those that stem from the subprime loans and the housing market.
It's been enabling it and demanding it and prodding it all along, and then now is enabling it further. Yes. $14.8 trillion in 7 months. Bloomberg reported. I mean, my God, that's more than the GDP in 7 months.
That's right. And the American people. I mean, I don't know what to say about my fellow Americans, but they're asking Congress to come and help us out to change things. That is, I mean, to ask Congress to help us, that's very much like seeing a building on fire and you calling the arsons who set it on fire to help you put it out. That's the same thing. And Congress is the cause of these problems. And you know what? And what gets me about I call it stupidity of Americans, or either the ignorance of Americans, is that Congress messed up. This current state of affairs was a result of Congress trying to give us, and the White House, trying to give us affordable housing. Now we're asking Congress to give us affordable health care.
Well, it's unbelievable. Bloomberg reported that $9.3 trillion would pay off all the mortgages in the country. So if it's 14.8 so far, where is all the money going? I mean, this is ridiculous. And they're admitting now that it's driven up mortgage prices because the banks have got all this money. They're just wanting to hoard it or to buy up other banks.